Hello, Dr. Isabel and everyone in Belize. I am Christie Wong from Hong Kong. I am a former veterinary nurse, and I came to know Dr. Isabel through one of her amazing courses on wildlife medicine. So currently I work at ADM Capital Foundation, ADMCF, and I have been for over 2 years now. I work as a wildlife crime court monitor and more recently a co-author of an exotic pet trade report that I will speak more about later. So thank you so much for having me and inviting me to share our work and discuss some of the wildlife trade issues we face here through this pre-recorded presentation. I sincerely apologize that I cannot attend the live session this time due to a very busy week and the time difference between Hong Kong and Belize. But feel free to reach out later if you have any questions. So let's get started. Okay. So ADMCF is a non-profit foundation focused on researching various environmental issues in Hong Kong and Asia more widely. The foundation contributes to climate change, climate action and biodiversity protection and have programs across several key sectors. And I am in the wildlife trade program looking at the international and local wildlife trade. So first, I want to provide some linkage between Hong Kong and Central and South America. So concerning the illegal wildlife trade between these regions, we know of several particularly large and notable cases. At this point in time, we are not currently aware of any cases specifically linked to Belize, but knowing the close proximity of these countries and the long-standing trafficking and border issues, it is possible that some of these contraband may have originated from Belize, potentially. We know of approximately 370 metric tons of wildlife that have been seized in Hong Kong originating from Central and South America, and that's just in the past 8 years. By volume, the majority have been with species, unsurprisingly. However, there have also been very large and significant seizures of shark fins, and in fact, the largest seizures of shark fin in Hong Kong's history originated from the region. In the next few slides, I will also share a few examples of notable cases, and these images and information come from the Hong Kong Customs and Excise Department. In January 2014, the traffickers attempted to smuggle 494 kilograms of seahorses into Hong Kong from various ports of Peru inside 3 different containers and concealing them within layers of leather. In this November 2018, Customs seized 83 tons of Guatemala and rosewood from 3 containers entering the city from Panama. In April and May of 2020, Hong Kong Customs seized a total of 26 tons of silky and fresher shark fins arriving in containers from Ecuador. Authorities estimated that the fins represented the killing and finning of as many as 38,500 sharks. And this case remains Hong Kong's largest known seizure of shark fins. So with these images and information of just a few cases, you can see there have been multiple high-volume seizures, particularly made of Hong Kong's container terminal. However, we understand that very few of these high-volume, often high-value seizures result in prosecution, let alone conviction. The only case in recent years relating to a seizure of containerized goods where we know the details of prosecution relates to 29 tons of Honduran rosewood in this picture. And in this case, only one person actually faced prosecution. She was a part-time worker and self-described housewife who allowed her particulars to be used on the import paperwork. She was sentenced to 3 months imprisonment, and whilst culpable of in the crime, she was hardly the mastermind. This case highlights the challenges and bringing to justice the organized criminal organizations facilitating this type of activity, and without prosecution to deter such activities, they will definitely continue. As mentioned at the beginning, I am a wildlife program court monitor for the courtroom monitoring program. This program started in 2014, and now over 146 court cases have been since observed by myself and colleagues before me. My main task is to track wildlife crime cases from seizure to sentencing by attending relevant court cases and sitting all hearings from start to conviction and sentencing. It involves writing notes of these hearings and sending these to my colleagues for data collection and analysis, and sharing these notes with local and overseas academics and NGOs who work against wildlife crime. So this program provides many insights into charging and convictions and sentencing of these cases. For example, although the cases often involve trafficking or possession of live animals under poor conditions, such as in this photo of endangered species, live tortoises heaped up and transported in boxes. CAP 169, which is the Prevention of Cruelty to Animals Ordinance, were rarely charged in the past, which is a concern and we need to monitor for. I'm sorry. And in addition, we also learn more about the modus operandi of criminals, how they operate, how organized they were, how they were recruited, what transport they used, how the illegal items were concealed, etc. And for example, we found out that through this program, many of the defendants who were caught trafficking wildlife were actually low-level carriers or mules. So they were not usually the masterminds of the cases. They are often not well educated, they're poor, they're the breadwinners of the family, they're just trying to earn enough money for their family, but sadly they are often targeted by criminals to carry out these high-risk smuggling activities. And this courtroom monitoring program has also informed the development of multiple reports and policy papers and helped push for law amendments. And just a note, you can actually go to our website, ADMCF.org, to download these reports to read. Last year, on August 18, 2021, we have some excellent news. Hong Kong's lawmakers decisively voted in favor of amendment bill to add wildlife crime offences to Hong Kong's Organised and Serious Crimes Ordinance, which we call the OSCO. This move was the result of many years of hard work from colleagues at ADMCF, many other NGOs, academics, and concerned individuals who kept pushing for a change in this area. And the amendment is a significant move because in the fight of wildlife crime, not just for Hong Kong, but also regionally and globally. It means that instead of the historic focus on the low-level mules caught red-handed carrying wildlife contraband, the government has provided its enforcement agencies and authorities to access enhanced powers to investigate, to prosecute, confiscate proceeds, and sentence the organized syndicates and masterminds behind the crime. So far, since the amendment, we have not seen any cases charged under OSCO yet. So again, we'll need to continue to monitor and push for this to happen. It may be that it may take some time for the relevant authorities to get proper training in order for them to be able to investigate these cases properly. So, as I mentioned, our focus recently included the exotic pet trade. The report that I co-authored with my colleagues was titled Wild Threatened Farms, Hong Kong's Invisible Pets. This report took 2 years in the making because it was like a Pandora's box. The more we learn about it, the more issues there were. Research took a long time also because we needed to request information and data from the government, from other experts as well. This is the first ever report that documents the scale and nature of the exotic pet trade in Hong Kong and highlights the complex needs of exotics in the trade at every point along the supply chain, and provides evidence suggesting that the current fragmented and outdated regulatory regime is insufficient to ensure animal health, welfare, and environmental and public health safety. Suggestions to reform policy regarding the aspects of this trade were also provided. So just a quick note on what exotic animal or pet is. Definitions vary a lot. But for the purposes of this report, the trade in exotic pets includes small mammals such as rabbits, rodents, ferrets, hedgehogs. It includes birds, reptiles, amphibians, and arthropods. Aquaria species were not included just because we didn't have enough data and capacity to do the research, and domestic cats and dogs were obviously also included. So why Hong Kong? Why is Hong Kong relevant? Why does our city matter? From previous research on the illegal wildlife trade, we have seen how vital our city is in specific trade with critically endangered wildlife. And we have noted that thousands of live animals have been seized in recent years. And Hong Kong has an outsized ecological footprint, definitely. So during our research and writing, we had to address many knowledge gaps, especially the volumes, the numbers of animals. We reviewed a number of data sets. We started with statistics from the Census and Statistics Department, which provides macro-scale data based on broad taxonomy. We then identified that as many as 24.4 million live exotics arrived in Hong Kong in just 5 years, from 2015 to 2019. That is excluding livestock, poultry, cats, and dogs. On reviewing the end use, we estimated that approximately 3.8 million were imported for the pet trade. Interestingly, or concerningly, we found sparingly few animals were officially leaving the city, which raises a lot of questions where they end up. More data maintained by Agriculture, Fisheries and Conservation Department, AFCD, provided some species level data and enabled us to refine the numbers estimated as pets. Based on this data, with reference to research and in consultation with local experts, we were able to determine that the import of exotic animals for the pet trade in these years, 2015 to 2019, likely amounted to 4 million animals drawn from over 700 species from 84 countries. Nearly 800,000 animals arrived in some years. Reptiles consistently made up the majority. CITES species, as in those imported under the regulations of the Convention on International Trade in Endangered Species of Wild Fauna and Flora, numbered 2.8 million, and with the remaining 1.2 million falling outside these regulations. Okay. We noted that the volume traded from 2015 to 2019 were part of a surge in the trade of live exotics from the early 2000s to the present. The large-scale extraction of exotic animals from their ecosystems for the global pet trade contributes to disrupt our ecosystem, exerting extreme and highly targeted pressure on thousands of species. So the sustainability of the trade was obviously our big concern. We found that over half, 52% of the exotic animals, including both CITES and non-CITES, imported over the last 5 years were from threatened species, meaning that these animals are facing the threat of extinction in the wild as determined by the IUCN. For CITES species, 2/3 of them were imported, were vulnerable. Even among the well over 500,000 classed as least concern, we found that nearly 2/3 were from populations whose status is unknown. Just 0.03% of society's animals were drawn from species whose populations were known to have been increasing, and only 7% were stable populations. For non-CITES animals, of the 1.2 million animals of 9 CITES species, over 70% were drawn from species whose wild populations are in a state of decline or whose status is unknown. Adding to the concerns of non-CITES species is our lack of data on their source. So unlike CITES regulated species, there is no requirement to trace these animals and whether they have been captured from the wild or reared in captivity. And reviews of just a few hundreds of these non-CITES species traded in recent years reveal a multitude of concerns, with some species facing imminent extinction. Okay, so you may have heard that some wildlife are captive bred or ranched. The term captive breeding is quite self-explanatory, which means animals reared in a controlled environment. In ranching, it is very similar, but they have been taken as eggs or juveniles from the wild. So both ranching and captive breeding are often proposed as sustainable approaches to meet the demands of the exotic pet trade, while said to be protecting wild populations from overharvesting. However, numerous captive breeding operations have been repeatedly linked to concerning and even illegal practices, and reviews of just a few hundreds of species traded in recent years reveal a multitude of concerns. So we have turtles that have arrived from war zones, such as Caspian turtles. We have species functionally extinct in the wild that have been traded commercially. We have tortoises that are claimed to be captive bred, have been imported from nations without any known or authorized breeding operations, such as the pancake tortoises from Zambia. The species has been imported in relatively large numbers, far exceeding the country's entire population, numbering only several hundred. The species typically laying just one egg a year. The species, such as the African spur tortoises here, landed in numbers exceeding strict quotas in their source nations. And breeding operations of yellow-spotted river turtles have been linked to overharvesting from the wild, as well as alleged financial crimes. So this species accounts for 60% of Hong Kong's turtles and tortoises imported over the last 20 years. Even though the species is bred through regulated operations, its populations have not been actually fully assessed by the IUCN in a quarter of a century. Traceability. Once animals have been purchased, they can disappear from the government's scrutiny, since private pet owners are not required to have licenses to possess critically endangered or endangered species, unlike traders. This limited traceability hinders enforcement of legislation, potentially allowing for breeding without controls, raising concerns about welfare, as well as potential trafficking to other jurisdictions. Online trade. Of course, we also have the issue of online trade with where animals are increasingly traded online, where monitoring and enforcement remains extremely challenging. Here, researchers from local university, the Lingnan University, found that 1/3 of all turtle species were present in Hong Kong's online trade from 2013 to 2016, including 24 critically endangered species. We observed 14,360 live turtles being advertised online and over 9,000 posts, but the majority were Asian and North American species. Animal suitability as a pet. An animal's suitability as a pet varies depending on the species' characteristics and needs, including their husbandry requirements, which are species-specific, and their natural behavior, size when they're fully grown, and their conservation status, etc. The presence of unsuitable species in the wildlife and pet trade has resulted in serious animal welfare issues, compromises public health and safety, and results in conservation challenges. So this is a table taken from our exotic pet trade report to show examples of species that are large reptiles with long lifespans common in the pet trade. As you can see, they are imported into Hong Kong in high volumes despite their large size, specialized needs, and some of these they're powerful bites, like the snapping turtles and potentially the green iguana as well. So, okay, these are alligator snapping turtles. Species that are large, easily stressed, notoriously aggressive, such as these snapping turtles, are particularly unsuitable as pets. Housing these animals safely in the domestic environment, as you can imagine, is extremely challenging and potentially very dangerous, especially in our tiny Hong Kong apartments. Pet shops here often sell these species as tiny hatchlings, And veterinary staff note that it is very common for people to be unaware of the size that they can grow to, and also unaware of the dangers that they can pose, especially to young children. Trafficking, on the top right-hand corner. In the past, there were several cases of high-volume seizures of snapping turtles, as you can see here, the top right, baby snapping turtles jam-packed into takeaway boxes and trafficked into Hong Kong. The seized turtles were sent to Kaduri Farm and Botanic Garden, KFBG, which is Hong Kong's only wildlife rescue and rehab center, for temporary holding on behalf of the authorities. Sometimes these animals will be rehabilitated and then repatriated back to their home country of origin, or sent to other sanctuaries or conservation centers overseas if they have space. But for this case, however, many died, and in the end, the turtles had to be euthanized on humane grounds, which is often the case for many trafficked animals, because there's just always too many of them. There's not enough resources. There's not enough centers to take care of them. There's not enough people to adopt them. So it is always best if we can protect them as best we can in their source country. The bottom right is just a screenshot from the news article. We often, I think I've seen quite a few of these articles about snapping turtles being found in the community, abandoned in the city. They are quite commonly found, not quite, but sometimes found in waterways in country parks or ponds in local community gardens. As you can imagine, they pose a danger to our native wildlife and the public. Here is a photo of a common snapping turtle that was presented dead on arrival to my clinic before, when I was working as a vet nurse. We did not find the cause of the death because the owner didn't want to perform an autopsy. But as you can see, the large size, it was almost in the size of the consultation table, and it can grow larger. And, they can pose a threat to professionals and owners if they ever need to be checked or handled or medicated. In recent months, local snake catchers have been called to capture snakes and lizards in or near an industrial building in the city. Most of these species were not native and likely for the pet trade. This is a photo from the Wildlife Center, KFBG, who received the snake and was captured from that industrial building. And we were told this particular cobra was actually an African species that is highly venomous. And of course, Hong Kong hospitals do not stock anti-venom for this. Okay, animal welfare. In a domestic environment, animals are often restricted to small and poorly constructed or designed enclosures for their entire life. With the animal's welfare entirely dependent on the keeper for provisions of appropriate nutrition, shelter, access to preventative health, veterinary care, and so failure to provide these can cause significant health issues, and often and very sadly, these are preventable health diseases that the animal will have to carry for the rest of their life if they don't die from it. So large parrots like this can have very long lifespans, coupled with their large size and demanding needs. They can be very difficult to accommodate. Birds need a safe space for exercise. Can we provide that? This is a blue and yellow macaw that belongs to a bird trader. And when out of the cage, it is chained up, which is very common. And in the cage, it's stereotyped and paces in the small cage. I don't know if this will show. Oops, sorry, but you can see how it's pacing and stereotyping in the cage, right? Okay. This is a form of abnormal behavior that often indicates poor psychological well-being and of frustration. On the left is an African grey parrot at a pet shop with signs of feather plucking, as you can see on its lower half of the body. And on the right is a red and green macaw under general anesthesia at the clinic for health check. You can see feathers are damaged and through chewing, which is called feather barbering. The cause of these feather damaging behaviors are often multifactorial and may have underlying medical causes, but are commonly seen in socially and mentally deprived parrots. Parrots in the wild live in flocks. They live with their mates. They are monogamous usually and spend their lives with only one mate. And in captivity, they require substantial mental stimulation, social interaction, and space that is very hard to satisfy. But sadly, people don't try to satisfy their needs, but often just keep them in small cages for the rest of their lives on the road. The prevalence and diversity of both epizootic and zoonotic pathogens in the exotic pet trade have not been well studied, but it is needed to inform the development and enforcement of robust and comprehensive regulations and policy to control, manage, and prevent potential disease outbreaks. Although currently there is no data available in Hong Kong on the mortality rate of imported exotic animals, according to a vet survey that we did in 2021, mortality rates caused by poor husbandry and avoidable infectious diseases are considered to be very high. And this is not surprising given the generally poor environmental state and hygiene conditions found in the local trade, as well as during transport. In cases of animal escape, abandonment, or deliberate release into the urban and wild environment, further represent a risk through introducing diseases and alien species that might compete with local species. Behavior matters. I want to, as I guess people who are listening to this presentation, you might be working with wildlife, you might be working with exotics, or you might have interest in it. So I think if you are dealing with any of these animals, learning about their behavior, natural history, ecology is very, very important. I'm sure Dr. Isabel will be able to provide her expertise on these should you wish to learn more. As most exotic pets are prey species, they have an incredible ability to hide their signs of illness and pain, an instinct known as the masking phenomenon. In the wild, this helps them hide their weakened state from potential predators, but that also means that exotic pets are often not taken to the vet until they become so critically ill that they can no longer conceal their condition. And when this happens, there is a very small window of opportunity for medical care, and this is easily missed. In the 4 photos on the left, these birds are very dull, and when they should be normally bright and alert. And as you can see, they're no longer hiding their signs or pain of illness or pain. They're exhibiting rumpled feathers. They're straining to breathe. Their tail and head is bobbing, and they could be or very likely on the verge of dying. On the right is a cockatiel that was presented to the vet but died shortly after. The owner reported that the bird had been brought from the local bird market just recently, and it was eating very well. It was very bright until very recently. And a sample was taken before it died and was diagnosed to be positive for avian chlamydiosis or psittacosis, which is a zoonotic infection. The feather on the dead bird was parted to show the lack of breast muscle and fat along the keel bone. It is in very poor condition, severely emaciated. And this image illustrates that birds are excellent at hiding their signs of illness, and subtle signs of disease can be easily overlooked, and emaciation can disguise under their feathers. So preventative healthcare is very, very important to the long-term health of any individual animal in trade, and proper care must begin before animals are being purchased or imported. A couple more examples to show why understanding their behavior is very important. For example, this reptile, a bearded dragon, spends considerable time pacing against the glass of its enclosure, but pet owners might think, oh, it's active, it's happy, it's asking to be petted. But this behavior, called the interaction with transparent boundaries, could be related to exploratory activity, but it could also be a maladaptive or abnormal behavior or stereotypy related to environmental and captivity stress. So this situation necessitates our prompt evaluation and then improvements in the environment and enclosure design and husbandry, because excessive excessive behavior like this can create friction lesions around its face, and if the environment is not hygienic, wound is a potential entry site for pathogens. And then some reptiles, such as the snakes, are often observed to be in hiding in their enclosure. So this observation has led to widespread belief that snakes do not need space to thrive. This belief resulted in the justification for our use, humans using bracking systems and generally small enclosures, many of which are so small that they cannot even extend its body full. Behavioral research has shown that the snakes prefer opportunity to move around and fully strengthen their bodies to alleviate discomfort, satisfy basic thermoregulatory needs, for exercise, and to avoid stress and disease. Pet owners and traders who invest in proper care and seek veterinary consultation for their exotic pets tend to be relatively few in numbers, and many who do seek appropriate care, they decline diagnostics or treatment because of cost constraints. And some owners prefer to take sick animals back to the shop for replacement or surrender them to the vet clinic or to shelters, or some might release them to the wild, which is of course not recommended. The situation has turned to what is known as the trash pet, wherein the cost of adequate care and veterinary treatment far exceeds the cost of purchase and the ability or willingness to pay, and the animals are often considered as disposable. So as you can see, there are many concerns around the sustainability and sourcing of exotic pets for the international pet trade. In Hong Kong, we have been a leading demand center. Relevant regulations have not kept pace with the growth or changing dynamics of Hong Kong's exotic pet trade, and we have a few recommendations which are discussed in more detail in our report. We have actually a few pages of recommendations, but here I will just highlight a few that may be of interest to those who are listening, perhaps maybe potentially apply to your country, as many of these issues are similar and other countries are also considering these. So, positive list. We want the government to assess the sustainability, disease risk, suitability, potential invasion risk, etc. of these species before allowing importation and incorporate it into a pre-screened and approved species list that are permitted to be traded, a so-called positive list. We want incentives for traders, that is the government to provide some incentives to animal traders and breeders where husbandry and other conditions provided to trade animals are higher than minimum standards. We want to inform consumers, for example, through a mandatory pet labeling system at the pet shops to help traders convey key information easily, for example, with labels that indicate species, the origin, the source, their conservation status, their care requirements, any hazards or precautions to prevent infectious disease transmission, their difficulty levels on caring, their size when grown, their lifespan, etc. So this kind of labeling system we hope can help traders provide some key information, and while increasing the potential owners' knowledge of the animal, its welfare and its husbandry needs, as well as associated precautions. And this may serve to reduce the impulse buying of animals and also serves as consumer protection. We also want to reform the possession license system in Hong Kong. We have a possession license system, but it's for possessing CITES Appendix 1 captive bred animals and Appendix 2 CITES listed animal of wild origin for commercial purposes. Although this possession license system is needed, it is currently unfit for purpose and needs to be reviewed and improved. We also want tamper-proof mechanisms for identifying individual animals that so that we can tie it to specific possession licenses. Most importantly, we want to adopt or enhance One Health approach. Policies need to be developed under the precautionary principle, with the One Health approach best suited to address complex emerging challenges. Such an enhanced approach would entail a shift from reactive to preventative and proactive efforts to combating disease to address the complex health risks and environmental problems that exist today. So as you can see on the right, One Health approach, it encompasses everything, right? Animals, environment, plants, and humans. This is an infographic that we did for the Exotic Pet Trade Report. You're welcome to download it and use it. Quite a handy tool for explaining to people. So this is the end of my presentation, and I hope you've enjoyed it. And if you have any questions, please feel free to email me. My email is on the top here. And if you can't contact me, you can also reach me through Dr. Isabel. So thank you so much for listening. Thank you so much.